Hello everybody. I thought I'd do a little quick catch up on our inquiry for 2023. If you remember correctly, we have chosen as our umbrella theme the theme of make it visible. So what is inside our children, their thoughts, their ideas, their potentials, we want to make that visible. And so that's kind of, I just wanted to catch you up on this year so far, our term 1 inquiry and term 2 inquiry, so that you can also share in the joy and the magic of what we're trying to do pedagogically this year. So term 1 began with making collections of materials, because materials is a huge part of our inquiry this year. Materials help us to think. Materials give our hands, our minds, our imaginations ideas. They feed our internal world. They make suggestions to the children, symbolic suggestions of what they themselves would like to be: a piece of clay, a piece of paper, simple, humble toilet roll. These have thoughts and ideas of their own, or that's how we like to see it. And so they have incredible value in the hands of children when children add the magic of their imagination, their unbounded imagination to materials. So term 1 was very much about making curations, collections of materials, and also taking stock of the materials that we ourselves have. What we know from previous years working with children and working with materials is that children want to be in relationship with materials. They want to develop strong, deep relationships with the things, the beautiful stuff of the world around them. Like in this previous documentation where children were offered a range of materials, Alice once created this creature, an imaginary creature. And you see it's got the luminous star on the top, the kind of leopard print body, a little bit of sparkle on the stomach, and I think it's a bit of perspex scrap at the bottom of it. And she says of it, this beautiful story, this beautiful narration of this magical creature that she has just created. She says, it likes to live in the dark. It normally eats any kind of animal. And it always never likes to live in the sun. It never goes into the sun because it's not friends with the sun. It's friends with the shade. So you can see in this previous example how children and materials can create stories together. They collaborate to make incredibly imaginative, original stories. And the materials in this case have informed the story as much as Alice herself and her imagination has informed the story. You can see this creature that is friends with the shade, and I'm sure that Alice has, somehow put together the luminous, the star that shines in the night. She says, having worked with the leopard print material, she says it normally eats any kind of animal, making that association clever, brilliant association of a predator that has normally got this kind of print or fur. So we can see that materials that are interesting to children, often found materials, not necessarily bought materials, can unlock fantastic potentials in children. So this brings us then to term 2. Having collected, curated materials, we also now moving into learning the language of these materials. What in Reggio talk you could say this is, we're learning the grammar of materials. What can materials do? What can paper do? What can plastic do? What can clay do? What is its identity? And yeah, this has led to an amazing start to the year of being so exploratory with materials and noticing how materials can unlock the imaginations of even the very youngest children in our school. Here we can see that children are building up like alphabets of the materials that they are using. These are scrumpled bits of paper. Paper can be folded, it can be scrunched, it can be wet, it can be drawn on, for example. And this is what we're busy doing, is learning these languages of different kinds of materials. And so this is also going to lead us into our Term 3 project, which is an exhibition of the children's creativity, of their ideas and their thinking. And there'll be more on that later, but this term is about making collections, making archives of the incredible creativity of children and also the teachers of Small World, together with parents as well. This is an example of an exhibition in the Loris Malaguzzi Center in the city of Reggio Emilia on different languages of, in this case, all different kinds of materials. It's called the Mosaic of Marks, Words and Material. And you can see the tools that we use, the different surfaces that were used for the children to draw on. You can see some documentation on panels, and it's something, a guiding light as to what we're aiming for in Term 3. Loris Malaguzzi, when he talked about one of the exhibitions that came out of the schools of the city of Reggio Emilia, he said, "This exhibition is opposed to every prophetic pedagogy, which knows everything before everything happens, which teaches children that days are the same, that there are no surprises, and adults that they must only repeat what they were not able to learn." So this exhibition, we don't exactly know what will be the content of it, but we are learning alongside the children every single day and doing our best to capture that creativity and make that visible, make that inner world of children visible to you as well as the Small World community. And here are some examples from subsequent exhibitions in the city of Reggio Emilia and other exhibitions in the world where children's thinking, their ideas are offered to the community. Parents come around and have a look. They can bring their family members, their friends, and we show the process as well as the products of what children have created. Okay, so, but why do we want to do that? Why do that? Why work with materials? Why create a whole exhibition? And why would we together as a community choose such a thing to work on for a whole year? Well, of course, it is to make visible the incredible capacities of children. That is why, as a school, we exist. A school where children are seen and heard. Again, Loris Malaguzzi, he says, to know how to speak to everyone of the infinite richness of children's potentialities, their capacity for wonder and research, their capacity for co-constructing knowledge through processes that are relational, active, and original. This has always been the exhibition's primary objective. Of course, we also want to document and use the children's inspirations, the materials inspirations, as part of our process of curriculum design, or what is known as progettazione, which is the process of designing curriculum, what we do in a school day, a school week, a school term, a school year. So this is very much about making a treasured collection of these aha moments, these stories that children create, the images, the art, the artworks, the sculptures. That for us is very important to make that visible And then also to create concrete testimonies of the children's work, of their innate brilliance and creativity, and of course ours. And joining us on this journey are some very important motivations, what we might call generative lenses that we would hold up, like I'm wearing these glasses. We would hold up and to be able to view the children and our work together through these certain lenses. So the one very, very important guide or muse to us in this inquiry, this research that we are doing, is the attitude of wonder, of awe. Those of you who maybe have come across the research into the science of awe, it's really amazing. I encourage you to go and have a look at that. There's some amazing podcasts and researchers that talk about this attitude, this it's not necessarily an emotion, of what awe and wonder does to the brain. It just lights it up. So that is our foremost guide and what we call a lens that we will view our work together through the work. I can't think of all the prepositions to use. And then something that is also very important to us as a generative lens is intuition. So there are many ways to know. Intelligence is one way, but intuition, knowing things not only with your head but your gut brain, is also a very important skill to develop in the children. And materials whisper things to children and allow them to develop that artistic and scientific intuition. It's also very important for us as well as the adults to continue to work with our own sense of things, our own intuitions, that not necessarily comes from what can be seen, what can be heard, what can be felt through the senses, but perhaps like a sixth sense about things. This is very important for us. And beauty. Beauty for children is inspiring. The beauty of materials. Children will see the beauty in a leaf, in a scrumpled up piece of paper, in a plastic bottle lid. It's very important for us also to tune our own, sometimes jaded adult eyes to beauty, to the things that are around us, to have value in, sometimes the trash that we might throw away. To a child, that is treasure, because they can add their imaginations to it, to that recipe, and create something even more beautiful and original and purposeful. And then identity and belonging. This is another generative lens, a lens that we hold up on the children's work and thinking as well as ours. And it's something that we look for and then we look to find, and then we find it, which is why it's generative lens. And currently we're exploring not only our own identities, which are given to us, but also generated by the world around us, but also that of materials. And materials also have identities. They have a history. Where does paper come from? Where does plastic come from? They have a future. Where is it going to? And also a willingness to be transformed. Paper, clay wants to be transformed by being touched by children or in the hands and minds of us. So I don't know if that sounds a bit complicated, but yeah, these are lenses that we hold up on our inquiry as we learn together about the different identities of materials together with the children. And then loose parts. It's a kind of practice in educational circles, a kind of pedagogy. But yeah, the pedagogy of loose parts says that children need access to bits and bobs, materials that are often found but loose. They don't have to be stuck down. They can be transformed. Once a child has made something, it can transform into the next thing. And yeah, this includes things like bottle tops and pegs and fabric and so many things that I'm sure we sometimes just don't think to keep for children. But yeah, that's why we're making this lovely collection in our new Wendy house of loose parts. We want to make visible this inventiveness of children. Children in schools are so often seen as information gobblers and spewers, but there's also something that is very special to children, and that is their ability to invent new information, generate new knowledge, and we think that it's children's right to be able to hold on to or keep this ability. And it's the school's responsibility to facilitate and just enlarge this capacity of children. It's a very special capacity, and it's what makes children special in the world. It's not something that we must dumb down or put through this kind of factory system of education where they're only receivers of knowledge. So inventiveness, yes, that is what we are making visible through this exhibition. Can you see, just with a few strips of scrap paper, how children are able to use just A4 white Typek paper and create all kinds of things like this. And then at the heart of it, of course, when we're working with materials, must be a generative lens of sustainability. How we use materials, how we trash materials, how we transform materials, how we reduce our consumption of materials, but also how we give new materials or old materials new life and a second chance. So this is also a big theme in 2023, what with our initiatives of collecting materials, also looking at our own waste usage. Every Friday we are doing waste audits, emptying our bins, counting the plastic and the paper, and yeah, just being mindful of materials and material usage in our schools. You know, just to get to know the names of different kinds, different species of plastic or different species of paper or textiles, polypropylene, velvet, taffeta, 800 gram paper, you know, it's a way to draw closer to materials and give value to the stuff, the beautiful stuff in the world. And some other muses that accompany us on our inquiry, our research with the children, is this idea of camouflage. This is taken from a book called Mosaic of Words, Marks and Materials, published by Reggio Children. Is of great inspiration to us this year, but looking for things that are camouflaged in children's artworks, or things that are not necessarily obviously seen or obviously displayed. Again, making visible the rhizome, what lies beneath, hidden. And that takes a certain kind of listening, a certain kind of seeing from all of us adults as well. And then a new technique that we have really been working on this year is this idea of a relaunch. It's where children have made something and it can serve as inspiration for all the children, and so we relaunched that the next day. Children get a chance to stand up in our morning meetings, share what they're currently busy with, the breakthroughs in their projects, And also then it gets relaunched to other children who might also be inspired by this idea. The relaunch is, it's a really great strategy in this kind of deep research that we're doing. So it becomes a very spiral way of learning rather than, question, answer, a linear way of learning. So that's really working for us very, very nicely this year. And then what we're really enjoying is watching for, through our lenses, watching for creative accidents, or what some people call happy accidents, which is kind of like maybe it's a random gesture or a, oh my goodness, I just made that, something that children have done with materials, and all of a sudden, whoop, there it is. It's an idea, it's a proposal, it's a product that wasn't necessarily set out from right at the beginning with a clear idea of what it was going to be, but emerged in the process of making stuff with materials. And it's interesting. It's something that you go, oh, wow, or there'll be an attitude of surprise or like an aha moment. And you definitely know that children and materials have worked together to create this little moment of genius, this creative accident. Of course, to the children, it is not a surprise at all, and it's not a mistake, or it is a surprise, but it's not a mistake at all. It's not an accident. It's a way of working that is very special and unique to children and geniuses. Okay, so that's our what, and that's our why. And now we're going to go on to our how. How do we do this? How have we been doing this year so far? Well, a lot of this inquiry, this long-term project for the year, happens during I time, which is inquiry time, the first half of the day, which is where children have access to all the classrooms, all 4 of the classrooms, both the ateliers and, of course, the outside spaces. And that is where children can feel free to explore together with mentor, teachers, coaches, people that will partner with them and co-research this central question about materials and relationships with materials and their abilities to inspire narrations and stories with the children. This also happens during Fridays for Future, so on Fridays and also on Mondays during Park School in the Unlimited Atelier of Nature. Here is a little example taken from the book Mosaic by Reggio Children on just how materials can inspire story and imagination. Small children, I think 2, 3, 4 years old, were offered corrugated cardboard instead of just a plain, white piece of paper, something interesting for the children. And they proceeded to draw different kind of bands of color guided by the corrugations of the cardboard. And you can see on the left, the child says lines, and then they flip it horizontally, and then they say lines that are sleeping. And just in this little moment, you see how it's a small example of how the materiality of materials are co-conspiring with children to create new imaginations, new images that are so symbolic and clever and poetic. And so each class, each teacher has chosen one kind or species of material and to really focus on for the first part of this term. So in the very youngest class, the 2-year-olds are working with the grammar of paper. You can see here that paper has many, many potentials, and children need to be given the opportunity to develop the language of paper, to develop in learning this language or the grammar of paper. Paper here, just cardboard, has been carved into, it's been patterned, it's been folded in waves, it's been printed on, it's been curled up, etc., etc. So we need to offer as many different processes, possibilities for children to develop in the language of their materials. And as they develop in learning the building blocks of these languages of materials, the grammar, the vocabulary gets broader and richer, they are then able to manipulate or transform these materials into all kinds of things. And this learning of these skills, these capacities, broadens their own imaginaries, their own internal world in turn. So then their proficiencies in working with the materials and the different processes and nourishes their children's imaginations as they're able to make what they think, make their ideas into real life. The 3-year-olds are working with the grammar of natural materials, and we have already seen how incredibly inspiring natural materials are to children. And natural materials are by nature very poetic. They have a geometry, a sacred geometry about them. They are very symbolic. If you think of a pine cone and all the things that looks like and can be, or an acorn or a leaf. So it's a very rich inquiry for children to have access to natural materials. The materials of mud and water and a stick and branch and seed and sky and sand, as the children learn all about how to manipulate, how to transform, how to act with and on these materials. And here is an image of children with a simple act of drawing geometrical shapes into sand. And then the 4 to 5-year-olds, they are working with the grammar of textiles. It's a much underrated, underdeveloped offering in schools at the moment, the language of textiles. And we would like children to learn this language, to learn what fabrics can do, and wool and cotton and netting, etc. There seems to be a lost art of sewing or the crafts, and perhaps our generation has been remiss in passing that on from our parents to the children, and yet it can be such a creative, poetic way of expressing ourselves. And then the older class, the foundation phase, is working with the grammar of plastic. We are in relationship with our plastic, even if we do buy it or find it, we want to work with it and give it life before it ends up in some ocean or some river or some landfill. And plastic has many potentials. It's really beautiful. It plays a lot with the language of light, and has many potentials. And we want to unlock these potentials with the older class of our school. Just think of this as an example, which is kind of like a melted, heated plastic that is used to create a beautiful tapestry, almost like painting with plastic using heat. And then I'll be working with the grammar of clay. I've just started pottery lessons so that I myself can learn the skills, learn the techniques, learn what clay can do, so that we don't limit this language, you can say, of pottery or the ancient art of science of clay work. We don't limit that and put a ceiling of that with our children. Clay has many potentials. It's not just for making pots or And when you add it to other materials, you can see in some of these images, clay with corrugated cardboard, clay with a perforated plastic tube down at the bottom left, clay with a sponge, clay with cloth. It's a really friendly material for children to use as well, because when they squeeze it, it holds its shape. When they roll it, it respects the will and the imagination of the child. So children and clay are great friends. You can even see in some of these images how when we join these materials to other materials, then even more possibilities appear. For example, paper and light. Can you see that top left image there? What about clay and a grater and paper? What does that do? It's what about paper and textiles, paper and sewing? So we also then want to move into what we might call, it's more trans-languaging. Once we've learned the language of these specific materials, we join them together in different ways and unlock even newer possibilities. So trans-languaging is normally used when we speak of how children learn multiple verbal languages or written languages, for example, English and isiZulu. And it's been shown to be an extremely effective way of teaching language, is using languages almost in a mix-mash context. The one language, perhaps it's the home language, is then mixed in with other languages that we're busy learning, and that is how each language then helps the other one to grow very fast in the child and in us all. So if I speak Kanini, isiZulu, a little bit of English, and Gooi and a bit of Afrikaans, that is a very effective way to learn languages. It's called trans languages. Now we want to apply this skill or this research to the learning the languages of materials and see if the same is true as well. And so we come to the end of this, what is it, a vlog? I don't know. It's a little peek, a long peek into our inquiry, and just to catch you up as the adults that are part of our children's inquiries as co-protagonists of our learning as a school. And I hope that you are inspired, that this can give you some insight into the kinds of things that we are working with, our research together for this year, and give you a lens or some lenses through which to view the weekly documentation and goings on in the school that you get through the newsletters and individual WhatsApp groups. And I hope that you will come in on this project, add to it, find interesting materials, work with materials in your own way, in your own homes, unlock potentials of these materials, with the children, and see also the value of your child's special secret sauce, their imagination and their abilities to make story out of almost nothing. Our goal remains to make a lovable school, an industrious, inventive, livable, documentable, and communicable school, a place of research, learning, of recognition and reflection, where children, teachers, and families feel well. That is our point of arrival, just as Loris Malaguzzi says. And so I encourage you this weekend to find some materials that perhaps as a child you were really drawn to. Maybe you like to play in the mud. Maybe you like to tinker with cutting and pasting of magazines. Maybe you like to fiddle with, taking machines apart. What was it that you loved to do, where you lost track of time? And create that space, find those materials, and just play around with them if you want to, by yourself or with children. Just as Roberta Pucci did in this image over here. It's an image that we need to credit her with, but she suggests that we as adults learn to play with these materials and see what is it like to have these materials speak to you, whisper ideas, thoughts, work with your muse, your internal muse, and create new ideas, new poetries and symbolisms inspired by materials, the materiality of materials. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing what really comes of this project, and how your input can really enrich this whole process of co-inquiry together with the teachers, children, and parents of Small World.